You know what nobody tells you when a man goes quiet on you? They tell you to wait. They tell you to be patient. They tell you to give him space, send him one last text, maybe check in after a few days to see how he's doing. And I want you to stop right there because that advice, as well meaning as it sounds, is exactly what's been keeping you stuck. Here's what I know after years of studying relationship psychology and watching real people navigate real heartbreak. The moment a man goes silent on you, the moment he starts pulling back, ghosting, or making you feel invisible, most women do the one thing that guarantees he never wonders about them. They chase. They reach out. They explain themselves. They shrink. And I get it. I genuinely do. That impulse to fix it, to close the loop, to get some kind of answer, that's human. That's not weakness, but it is a mistake. Because here's the truth nobody's saying out loud. When a man ignores you, the most powerful thing you can do is not what you think. It's not about playing games. It's not about sending a perfectly timed text or posting a photo to make him jealous. What I'm about to walk you through goes much deeper than that. This is about your psychology, your posture, the way you carry yourself when someone shows you that right now, in this season of his life, he's choosing not to prioritize you. And what you do in that moment, not to him, but for yourself, will determine everything. So if you've ever been ignored by a man you cared about, or if you're going through it right now, stay with me. Because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why most women lose their power in these moments and precisely how to reclaim it, not to manipulate him, but to genuinely become the kind of woman who makes any man wonder what on earth he let go of. Now, before we go any further, I want to reframe the entire conversation because there's a distinction most people miss right from the beginning. And if you miss it, everything else falls flat. When a man ignores you, most people treat that as a relationship problem. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I want you to separate something very clearly. Love and a relationship are not the same thing. They never have been. You can love someone and not be in a functional relationship with them. And you can be in a relationship with someone and not be experiencing real love. These are two completely different things, and I need you to hold on to that distinction as we move through this video. Because here's the thing people get wrong about being ignored. They treat it as a verdict on their worth. He went quiet, therefore something is wrong with me. He pulled back, therefore I must fix this. I must reach out. I must prove my value. But what if being ignored isn't a reflection of your worth at all? What if it's simply information? Information about where he is, what he's prioritizing, what he's capable of giving right now. And more importantly, what if how you respond to that information is what actually shapes your future? That's the reframe. This video isn't about him, it's about you. And what you do with the silence is either going to define you or diminish you. Let's make sure it defines you. So let's talk about the first thing I want you to understand, and it might be the most uncomfortable one. So I'm going to say it clearly. The silence you're experiencing from him is not the actual problem. Your response to that silence, that's where the real damage gets done. I was talking to someone recently, a woman in her early 30s, smart, genuinely beautiful inside and out, and she told me that after a man she'd been seeing for about 3 months went quiet, she sent him 14 texts over the course of a week. 14. Not because she's desperate, not because she's weak, but because no one had ever taught her what that silence actually means. And no one had taught her how to sit in it without unraveling. Here's what I want you to understand about the psychology of pursuit. There is a principle in human behavior that is as reliable as gravity, and it applies to men in particular, though not exclusively. People value most what they have to think about, what they have to wonder about, what they cannot fully predict or possess. This isn't a manipulation tactic. This is basic human psychology. When something is constantly available, constantly reaching out, constantly closing every gap, the brain stops registering it as valuable. Not because it isn't valuable, but because the brain is wired to pay attention to contrast, to change, to uncertainty. Think about it like this. Imagine you've been listening to the same song on repeat for the past 2 weeks. You love it the first time you heard it, maybe the second, the third, the fourth, but somewhere around the 100th play, something shifts. The song hasn't changed, you haven't changed, but your brain has started tuning it out because it's predictable. There are no more surprises, there's no more discovery, and so the magic fades. Now, I'm not saying you're a song. I'm making a point about attention and the way the human brain assigns value. When a man goes silent and you immediately flood him with messages, calls, explanations, emotional outpourings, you are removing all mystery. You are answering every question before he even has a chance to ask it. You are giving him the comfort of knowing exactly where you are and exactly how you feel while he gives you nothing in return. And subconsciously, whether he admits it consciously or not, he starts to take that for granted. But here's the other side of this. When the silence is met with more silence, not out of game playing, but out of genuine self-possession, something starts to shift in his mind. Now, he doesn't know where you are. He doesn't know what you're doing. He doesn't know if you're okay, if you're thriving, if you've moved on. And the human mind, his mind, cannot help but fill in that blank. That's not manipulation, that's psychology. The practical takeaway here is this. The next time he goes silent, your job is not to break that silence. Your job is to go inward. Not to punish him, not to play a game, but to genuinely redirect your attention towards yourself. And we're going to talk about exactly what that looks like in a few minutes. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because there's a second thing I want you to understand. And this one challenges something that almost everyone in the dating advice space gets completely backwards. Most advice tells you that when a man ignores you, you should focus on looking better, acting busier, posting more on social media to show him what he's missing. And while there's a surface level logic to that, I want to push you deeper. Because there's a massive difference between performing unavailability and actually becoming genuinely unbothered. And men, especially emotionally intelligent men, can feel that difference immediately. Performing unavailability looks like this. He ignores you for 3 days, so you wait exactly 3 days before responding. He doesn't double text, so you make a rule about never double texting. You post a photo on Instagram at a strategic time, hoping he sees it. You tell your friends to mention to his friends that you've been out and looking amazing. None of that is real. None of that has roots. And it doesn't work long term because it's built on him. It's still entirely organized around getting a reaction from him, which means he still has all the power. Genuine unavailability looks completely different. It's when you are so invested in your own life, your own growth, your own healing, your own joy, that you don't have time to be strategic about him. It's when the nights you used to spend wondering why he hasn't texted are now spent in a cooking class, a gym session, a conversation with a friend who genuinely pours into you, or a quiet evening where you reconnect with who you are outside of this situation. Here's an analogy that might land differently. Think about the most successful people you know in business, in fitness, in creative work. Have you ever noticed that the ones who are truly thriving are never the ones running around trying to convince people they're thriving? The ones who are actually doing the work don't need to announce it. The results speak. The energy speaks. The way they carry themselves speaks. And people around them, people who overlooked them, people who underestimated them, start to notice without being told to. That is the kind of unavailability I'm talking about. Not a performance, a reality. And when that reality is what a man senses from you, when he can't reach you because you're genuinely in your life and not waiting by the phone, that is when the wondering begins. I want to give you a practical framework here. There are 3 areas of your life that I want you to intentionally pour yourself into the moment you realize you're being ignored. Not as a strategy to win him back, but because you deserve a full life regardless of what he decides. The first is your physical body. Not to look better for him, but because the way you treat your body is directly connected to how powerful you feel inside. When you're being ignored, your nervous system is under stress. You're in a low-grade state of emotional fight or flight. And movement, exercise, yoga, walking, dance, whatever it is for you, is one of the most evidence-backed ways to regulate that state. When your body feels strong and cared for, your mind follows. And your energy shifts in ways that are palpable to everyone around you, including him if and when he resurfaces. The second is your social world. One of the most dangerous things being ignored can do is isolate you. You start pulling back from friends because you don't want to keep talking about it. You decline invitations because you don't feel like being around people. And suddenly, your world shrinks to just you and the thought of him. Resist that actively. Reach out to the people in your life who make you feel seen, heard, and valued. Go to the dinner. Accept the invitation. Show up to the thing you said you'd go to. Not to distract yourself from your feelings, but to remember that there is a rich, full world around you that doesn't hinge on his response. The third is your ambition. Whether that's a career goal, a creative project, a business idea, a fitness target, a personal development goal, this is the time to go after it with everything you have. Think about it this way. The energy you've been spending thinking about him, analyzing his behavior, crafting the perfect text, that is real energy. Redirect it. Every hour you spend pouring into something that builds your actual life is an hour where you become more interesting, more capable, more textured as a human being. And interestingly, that is often the very thing that makes a man wake up and realize what he's losing. Not the text you sent, not the post you made, but the version of you that stopped waiting and started building. Now let's talk about the third angle. And this one is about something that most relationship coaches don't discuss enough. It's the concept of emotional congruence. And it might be the real reason why some women make men wonder and others don't. Emotional congruence, in simple terms, means that what you feel on the inside matches how you show up on the outside. And here's where this gets real. When you're being ignored, and you're devastated on the inside, but you're trying to perform confidence on the outside, people feel the gap. Men feel the gap. And it doesn't create attraction, it creates dissonance. There's something underneath that feels off, even if no one can name exactly what it is. But when you're going through it, when you're genuinely hurt by being ignored, and instead of performing happiness, you do the internal work to genuinely process and heal, something different happens. You start to carry yourself differently, not because you're pretending to be okay, but because you've done the work to actually get there. And that coherence, that alignment between what you feel and how you show up is what creates a certain kind of magnetism that no strategy can replicate. I'm telling you, I've seen this play out over and over. A woman works on herself, not for him, not even consciously to attract anyone, but just because she decided she deserved better than being stuck in the pain of someone else's silence. She processes her feelings. She rebuilds her sense of self. She heals the parts of her that felt like she needed his attention to feel worthy. And then, 3 or 4 months later, sometimes sooner, he resurfaces. Not because she played it perfectly, but because the version of her he now encounters is someone he genuinely didn't expect to exist. Someone who seems lighter, more settled, more complete. And the question in his mind is not, is she still available? The question is, what has she been doing? Who has she become? Did I make a mistake? That is what wonder looks like. And you cannot fake your way into creating it. Now, let me address something directly, because I know a lot of you watching have a very specific situation in mind. Some of you are not dealing with casual dating. You're dealing with a man you were in a relationship with, maybe even a long relationship, someone you built something real with. And the silence from him feels not just confusing, but almost unbearable, because love and relationship are tangled together in a way that makes the pain sharper. And to you, I want to say this specifically. The principles we've been discussing apply, but the emotional weight is different. And I don't want to minimize that. When someone you genuinely loved and committed yourself to starts pulling away or going silent, the instinct to fight for the relationship, to show him what you meant to each other, to remind him of what you built, that instinct is not irrational. It comes from a place of genuine love. But here's the distinction that matters. Fighting for a relationship by chasing someone who's gone quiet never works. Not because fighting for love is wrong. It isn't. But because the energy of chasing is the energy of desperation. And desperation never restores what was lost. What restores it, if it can be restored, is when both people feel a genuine pull. And for him to feel a genuine pull towards you, he has to sense that you have a life, a world, a sense of self that exists fully and powerfully independent of him. Think about it from his perspective for a moment. If he's been pulling away, whether it's for reasons he can articulate or just a vague feeling of something being off, and he sees you chasing, he doesn't feel more connected to you. He feels more pressure. And pressure in that emotional state doesn't create reconciliation. It creates more distance. But when he hears through mutual connections or sees in passing or senses from the occasional glimpse into your world that you're doing more than okay, that you've stepped fully into your own life, suddenly the dynamic changes entirely. He's no longer running from pressure. He's standing still, looking over his shoulder, wondering when you turn the corner, wondering what it means that he doesn't feel your pursuit anymore, wondering, and this is the key, what it would feel like to lose you for real. That wonder is only possible if you've stopped chasing. And here's the hard truth. You can't manufacture it. You can only earn it by genuinely moving forward. Let me bring in a fourth angle now, because this one is about something I want every woman watching to internalize on a deep level. It's about standards. Not as a concept, but as something that operates in your behavior, whether you're conscious of it or not. Here's what I mean. Every relationship has what I'd call an invisible contract. Not the spoken kind, the unspoken kind. The one that gets written through behavior over time. The one that says what is acceptable and what is not. What gets rewarded and what gets ignored. And the moment a man starts ignoring you, you have a choice. And this is where most people don't realize a choice is even being made. You can respond to his silence by pursuing him, which writes a clause into that invisible contract that says, my attention and presence can be withdrawn and she will still pursue me. Or you can respond to his silence by continuing to live your life fully, which writes a completely different clause. If you go quiet, the dynamic shifts. I don't wait, I don't chase, I continue. And here's what's profound about that second clause. It's not a punishment, it's a standard. And standards, when they're lived and not just declared, change everything about how someone treats you. People treat us according to what we tolerate. That is not a comfortable truth, but it is a real one. I want to give you an analogy from the professional world because I think it lands cleanly. Imagine you're a business and a client starts ghosting you, stops responding to your messages, cancels calls, goes dark. Now, a business that immediately floods that client with discounts, special offers, extra attention, frantic follow-ups, that business has just told that client, you can disappear on us and we'll work harder for less. But a business with genuine confidence in what it offers says, we're moving forward. We have other clients, we have other projects. If you're interested, here's where to find us. Which client do you think comes back with more respect and more commitment? You are that business. Your love, your attention, your time, that is the product. And what you're willing to accept in exchange for it sets the market value. Now, the fifth angle, and maybe the one that ties everything together in the most important way. I want to talk about what it actually means to make him wonder, not just strategically, but psychologically. Because I've said it throughout this video, and I want to make sure we land this with clarity. Wonder is not the same as jealousy. Wonder is not the same as game playing. Wonder is not manufactured through any single tactic. Wonder is the natural byproduct of you becoming genuinely, authentically, undeniably more settled, more certain of who you are, more aligned with your own values and direction, more at peace with the uncertainty of a situation that you once felt desperate to control. And here's the beautiful counterintuitive thing about that. When you reach that place, and it takes time, it takes work, it takes real emotional honesty, you often stop caring as much about whether he wonders. Because you've discovered something about yourself in the process. You've discovered that your value was never attached to his attention. That your joy was never dependent on his response. That the life you've been building in his silence is a life you genuinely love. And that discovery, that shift in your internal posture is what creates wonder in other people, not just in him. It creates it in new people who come into your life. It creates it in old connections who see you differently. It creates it in him if and when he resurfaces, because the woman he encounters is someone who no longer needs what he has to offer, and yet someone who, in that wholeness, is more attractive to him than she has ever been. I was talking to a woman who went through exactly this. Her relationship of 2 years ended with a slow fade. He didn't break up with her officially. He just quietly withdrew until the silence said everything words hadn't. And she did what most people do for the first month. She reached out, she asked questions, she tried to understand. Then she made a decision. She stopped. Not to win him back. She made a decision because she realized she was pouring herself into a void and she was running dry. She started going back to things she loved before the relationship: painting, morning runs, weekly dinners with her sisters. She started investing in her career in a way she deprioritized. She dealt with old emotional wounds in therapy. And about 4 months later, he reached out. He'd heard from mutual friends that she was doing well. He'd seen something online. He wasn't sure what it was, but he said, and she told me this directly, he said he'd been thinking about her and wondering if he'd made a mistake. And she said to me, the strange thing is, by the time he said that, I'd already found my answer. The answer was me. That is the story I want for you. Not the story of winning him back. The story of winning yourself back first and then seeing what life looks like from that place. So let me bring this home. If a man is ignoring you right now, whether it's the early stages of dating, a situationship that's gone cold, or a longer relationship that started to unravel, here is what I need you to hear. You are not being ignored because you're not enough. You are being given information. And what you do with that information will either shrink you or expand you. The path that shrinks you is the one that chases him, explains itself, reduces itself, waits. The path that expands you is the one that says, if he's not showing up, then I'm going to show up for myself completely without apology. Do not perform your healing. Do the actual work of it. Get into your body, get into your community, get into your ambitions. Process the grief, because grief is real when someone you care about goes quiet. Don't bypass it, but don't get stuck in it either. Let it move through you and then let it inform you. Let it show you who you are without needing his validation, and let it clarify the standards you're going to carry into everything that comes next. And understand this deeply, that the woman who makes a man genuinely wonder what he lost is never the woman who tried the hardest to keep him. She's the woman who, the moment she realized he wasn't showing up, decided to start showing up for herself so fully, so completely, so unapologetically, that even she didn't recognize the version of herself she'd become by the other side of it. Make that your goal. Not to make him miss you, to make yourself proud. The rest will follow. If this video gave you something today, a shift, a new perspective, even just a single sentence that landed, please hit the like button. It helps this channel reach people who genuinely need to hear this. Subscribe if you haven't already, because on The Psychology of Love, this is what we do. We go deep, we go real, and we don't sugarcoat what it actually takes to build love that lasts. And I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever been in a situation where pulling back and focusing on yourself actually changed the dynamic? Tell me your story. I read them, and I'll see you in the next one.